The massive ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning when most people were drinking their coffee and checking the news. The vessel was so large it blocked out the sun over 3 major cities, casting shadows that stretched for hundreds of miles. Its surface gleamed like polished crystal, and strange lights pulsed along its edges in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Admiral Lisa Carter was in her office aboard the UES Defiance when the alarm started screaming. She had been reviewing supply reports when her communication officer burst through the door without knocking. The young man's face was pale and his hands shook as he handed her the scanner readings. Lisa looked at the numbers twice before she believed them. The ship was 12 miles long and 4 miles wide, bigger than any human structure ever built. Commander Velther stood in the center of his command chamber, watching the blue and green world below through his viewing screen. He was tall and thin like all his people, with skin that looked like living crystal and eyes that glowed with soft purple light. This was his 18th conquest, and he expected it to go like all the others. The local species would see their power, realize they could not win, and either submit or agree to be relocated to a smaller part of their world. Velther had studied the planet's inhabitants through their radio signals and satellite transmissions. They called themselves humans and seemed to be at roughly the same technology level as the Korani had been when the Zephyrian Empire conquered them 50 years ago. The humans had nuclear weapons and basic space travel, but nothing that could threaten an Imperial war vessel. Their planet was divided into many small nations that fought constantly among themselves. They would be easy to control once their governments understood the situation. The communication started exactly at noon, Earth time. Every television, radio, computer, and phone on the planet suddenly displayed the same message in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages. The voice was calm and pleasant, like a teacher explaining something simple to children. "People of Earth," the voice said, "I am Commander Velther of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for colonization by our people. We require 60% of your land surface for our settlements and mining operations. You will be allowed to keep the remaining 40% for your own use. This is a generous offer, as most species we encounter receive only 20%. You have 30 of your days to prepare for our arrival and to relocate your populations to the designated zones. Resistance is not advised, as our technology is far beyond your capabilities. We do not wish to harm you, but we will use whatever force is necessary to secure our new colony." The message ended and normal broadcasts resumed. For several minutes, the entire planet was silent. Then the chaos began. Dr. Alan Brooks was in his laboratory at MIT when the message played. He had spent his entire career studying the possibility of alien life, and now it was demanding his planet. He immediately called the government hotline that had been set up years ago for exactly this situation. Within an hour, he was on a military transport heading to Washington. President Helen Martinez was in an emergency cabinet meeting when the reports started flooding in. Panic in the streets, stock markets crashing, governments around the world calling for immediate conferences. But what surprised her most was the other reports. Military bases were not in chaos. Soldiers were not deserting. Instead, they were asking for orders. Captain Jake Morrison got his orders 3 hours after the alien message. He was to take his ship, the UES Ghost Rider, and get as close to the alien vessel as possible without being detected. His crew of 12 was the best in the fleet, all veterans of the Mars conflict and the asteroid mining wars. They knew how to stay hidden and how to fight if hiding was no longer possible. The Ghost Rider was humanity's most advanced stealth ship, built with technology that could hide it from most sensors. Jake guided it slowly toward the massive alien vessel, using the moon as cover. What he saw through his telescopes made his blood run cold. The ship had weapon ports that could level cities and shield generators that could probably stop a nuclear missile, but he also saw something else. The aliens were not expecting a fight. Their defensive positions were minimal and their patrol patterns were lazy. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter was receiving reports from around the globe. The initial panic was fading, replaced by something the aliens had not expected: anger, humans, were not fleeing to caves or begging for mercy. They were getting ready to fight. Military reserves were being called up without being ordered. Weapons factories were shifting to wartime production. Scientists were working around the clock to find weaknesses in alien technology. Commander Velther was reviewing reports from his own sensors when his tactical officer approached with a concerned expression. The readings from the planet below were confusing. Instead of the expected chaos and surrender negotiations, they were detecting massive increases in industrial activity. Power signatures were spiking across the planet as if the humans were preparing for something. Perhaps they are simply moving their populations as ordered, the tactical officer suggested, but Velther was not convinced. In his experience, primitive species either submitted immediately or collapsed into chaos. This organized activity was neither. The first response from Earth came 18 hours after the ultimatum. Every communication device on the alien ship suddenly activated with a simple message that appeared in the Zephyrian language. The translation was perfect, which surprised Velther since his people had never shared their language with humans. The message was only one word, but it changed everything. No. The word was spoken by Admiral Carter, and it came not from a government building or military base, but from the bridge of her ship as it moved into position near Earth's largest orbital station. Behind her words was the sound of weapons charging and engines warming up. The message was clear. Earth would not surrender. Earth would fight? Velther stared at the message for a long time. In 800 years of imperial expansion, no species had ever responded to an ultimatum with a single word of refusal. They asked for more time, tried to negotiate, offered tributes, or begged for mercy. None had ever simply said no and meant it. He realized he was about to face something his people had never encountered, a species that would rather die fighting than live as subjects. The war was about to begin, and neither side truly understood what they were starting. The United Nations building had never seen anything like it. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in the same room for the first time in decades without arguing. President Helen Martinez stood at the podium looking out at faces that showed fear, anger, and determination in equal measure. The usual political games had stopped. There was only one topic that mattered now. "The Phoenix Protocol is now active," she announced, and the room fell completely silent. Most people had never heard that name before, but every military leader and intelligence chief knew what it meant. For 30 years, the world's governments had secretly prepared for exactly this moment. Not for war between humans, but for war against something from outside their world. General Rick Thompson was already moving before the president finished speaking. Military bases across 6 continents received coded messages that activated hidden systems and revealed equipment that officially did not exist. Factories that made cars and computers suddenly began producing weapons and armor. Scientists who had been working on space exploration projects opened sealed orders and began building very different kinds of spacecraft. The transformation was incredible to watch. In Moscow, a facility that manufactured farming equipment revealed massive assembly lines for military vehicles. In Tokyo, electronics factories began producing advanced communication systems. In London, aerospace companies started building ships designed for combat in space. Every major nation had been preparing for this day, and now their preparations were paying off. Dr. Susan Wells had been waiting for this moment her entire career. She led a team of the world's best scientists, engineers, and computer experts. In a facility hidden beneath the Swiss Alps, their job was simple in theory but nearly impossible in practice. They had to figure out how alien technology worked and find ways to fight it. They had 72 hours to produce results. Susan's team had been studying every piece of alien communication since the first message arrived. The energy signatures, the transmission methods, even the way their language was structured. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but their technology followed patterns that human science could understand. More importantly, they seemed to use the same energy sources that humans were beginning to experiment with. Admiral Carter watched from her command center as reports came in from around the planet. The speed of mobilization was beyond anything in human history. Nations that had been enemies for generations were sharing their most secret weapons technology. Scientists who had never worked together were combining their knowledge to solve problems none of them could handle alone. It was as if the alien threat had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Captain Morrison was still hidden near the alien mothership when the first human reinforcements arrived. He watched through his sensors as dozens of ships appeared from Earth, moving into defensive positions around the planet. They were not running away or trying to hide. They were preparing for battle. The aliens seemed confused by this response. Their patrol patterns became more erratic, and Morrison could see additional weapon systems powering up on their ship. Commander Velther was studying tactical reports when his science officer brought him disturbing news. The humans were not behaving according to any pattern in Zephyrian databases. Their industrial capacity was increasing at a rate that should have been impossible. Energy readings from their planet showed massive construction projects beginning simultaneously across their entire world. Most disturbing of all, their space-based defenses were being reinforced rather than evacuated. The first test came when a small Zephyrian probe approached one of Earth's orbital stations. The probe was meant to scan human defenses and send back detailed information about their capabilities. Instead, it was destroyed by a weapon beam that came from the station itself. The beam was based on technology that should not have existed on this planet. Velther realized the humans had been hiding their true capabilities. Dr. Wells made her first breakthrough 36 hours after the project began. The alien energy signatures matched theoretical work that human scientists had been doing with zero-point energy extraction. If she was right, the aliens were using the same fundamental forces that humans were just beginning to understand. More importantly, she thought she knew how to disrupt their power systems, the first human-built ship designed specifically to fight. Aliens rolled out of a hidden facility in Nevada just 48 hours after the Phoenix Protocol activation. It looked nothing like previous human spacecraft. It was smaller, faster, and covered with weapon systems that had never been tested in combat. Colonel Mike Henderson was chosen to be its first pilot, not because he was the best pilot, but because he was the most unpredictable. President Martinez addressed the world again on the third day after the alien ultimatum. This time, her message was not just for humans. She broadcasted on the same frequencies the aliens had used, making sure Commander Velther would hear every word. To the Zephyrian Empire, she said, "You have made a serious mistake. You thought you found a primitive world that would surrender to superior technology. Instead, you found a species that has spent its entire history learning how to fight against impossible odds. We do not surrender, we do not submit. We adapt, we overcome, and we win. Your 30-day deadline is rejected. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us. And we promise you that will cost more than you are willing to pay." The message ended with something the aliens had never heard before. Military transmission codes from every human nation on Earth, all broadcasting the same signal, unity. For the first time in their history, humans were acting as one species instead of hundreds of competing tribes. Commander Velther felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. His tactical computers were telling him that human resistance should collapse within days of the first attack. But his sensors were showing him massive defensive preparations and weapon systems that appeared to be designed specifically to counter Zephyrian technology. The humans were not just refusing to surrender, they were preparing to win. The fourth day brought news that changed everything. Captain Morrison reported that human ships were not just taking defensive positions. Some of them were moving toward the alien vessel, approaching slowly but steadily. They were not trying to escape or hide, they were preparing to attack. The prey was becoming the hunter, and the war was about to begin in earnest. The first shots of the war were fired at Luna Base on the fifth day. Commander Velther had grown tired of waiting and decided to make a demonstration of Zephyrian power. He sent 3 assault craft toward the human moon base, expecting to destroy it quickly and show Earth what resistance would cost them. Instead, He learned that humans fought very differently than any species he had encountered before. Captain Nina Rodriguez was in charge of Luna base defenses when the alien ships appeared on her scanners. She had been expecting this attack since. The Phoenix Protocol began, and her base was ready. What the aliens did not know was that Luna base was not just a research station. It was a fortress that had been built over 20 years using mining equipment and construction techniques that could work in the harsh environment of space. The Zephyrian assault craft approached the moon expecting to find a small human outpost with basic defenses. Instead, they found a base that covered most of the lunar surface with underground tunnels, weapon platforms, and shield generators that had been hidden from their scans. When Nini gave the order to fire, the entire moon seemed to come alive. With energy beams and missile launchers, the first alien ship was destroyed before its pilot realized what was happening. The second managed to fire a few shots before Nina's gunners turned it into floating debris. The third ship tried to retreat, but human fighters that had been hidden in craters across the moon's surface surrounded it and forced it to surrender. For the first time in Zephyrian history, one of their ships had been captured by an enemy force. Commander Velther stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 assault craft, each capable of destroying a city, had been defeated by what his intelligence reports claimed was a simple research station. The loss of ships was bad enough, but the capture of the third craft was a disaster. The humans now had access to Zephyrian technology, weapons, and most importantly, crew members who could be questioned. The interrogation of the captured Zephyrian pilot revealed information that changed everything Dr. Alan Brooks thought he knew about their enemy. The pilot, whose name translated roughly to Skywalker, was confused and frightened in a way that seemed strange for a member of a conquering military force. Through careful questioning, Alan discovered something incredible about Zephyrian society. The Zephyrians had never fought a total war. Their conquests were civilized affairs with rules that both sides understood and followed. They would demonstrate superior power, offer terms for surrender, and the defeated species would accept integration into the empire. Combat was limited and brief, designed to show strength rather than destroy enemies. They had no experience with an enemy that refused to follow these rules. Skywalker told Alan about the 17 worlds the Zephyrians had conquered. In every case, the local species had accepted defeat after losing a few battles. Some negotiated for better terms, others tried to hide their most valuable resources, but none had ever fought back with the intensity humans were showing. The idea of deliberately destroying your own facilities to deny them to the enemy was completely foreign to Zephyrian thinking. Colonel Mike Henderson was chosen to lead the first human boarding action against a Zephyrian vessel. His ship was equipped with cutting tools that had been designed for mining asteroids but worked just as well for cutting through alien hull plating. His team included engineers, soldiers, and scientists who had trained for this mission using information gathered from the captured pilot. The boarding action took place when another Zephyrian ship approached Earth's orbital defenses. Instead of fighting it directly, human ships used mining charges to damage its engines and force it to drift helplessly. Then Henderson's team used their modified tools to cut their way inside. What they found was a ship designed for comfort and efficiency, not for fighting enemies who might board it. The Zephyrian crew was completely unprepared for humans who used construction equipment as weapons and fought in ways their training had never covered. Henderson's team moved through the ship using techniques learned from urban warfare, treating every corridor like a street fight and every room like a building to be cleared. Within 2 hours, they controlled the entire vessel and had captured 23 prisoners. Dr. Susan Wells was working around the clock to understand the technology from the captured ships. What she found was both exciting and troubling. Zephyrian technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also specialized for their way of thinking. Their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. Their ships prioritized comfort over armor, and their computer systems assumed cooperative users rather than hostile ones. The breakthrough came when Susan realized that Zephyrian power systems used quantum resonance fields that could be disrupted by specific energy frequencies. Human scientists had been experimenting with similar technology for years without realizing its military applications. Now they could build weapons that would shut down alien ships without destroying them, allowing more captures and more intelligence. Gathering, Commander Velther found himself facing a crisis that no Zephyrian commander had ever experienced. He had lost 5 ships in 1 week, with 3 captured intact along with their crews. Worse, the humans were using captured technology to build new weapons and defenses. His reports to the Empire were met with disbelief and demands for more aggressive action. The turning point came when Velther decided to use the Crimson Guard, elite Zephyrian warriors who had never been defeated in battle. These soldiers were bigger and stronger than regular Zephyrians, equipped with the best weapons and armor the Empire could provide. They had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated every enemy they had faced. Velther was certain they would restore Zephyrian dominance and force the humans to surrender. The Crimson Guard's first mission was to retake Luna Base and demonstrate that human victories were only temporary. 50 of the Empire's best warriors approached the moon in an assault ship designed to resist the weapons that had destroyed earlier vessels. They expected to face desperate humans with captured alien equipment they barely understood. Instead, they encountered an enemy that had spent a week learning how to fight Zephyrians and was ready for anything the Empire could send. Captain Rodriguez watched the new alien ship approach and smiled grimly. Her base now had weapons built specifically to counter Zephyrian technology, and her soldiers had trained extensively using information from captured prisoners. The aliens were about to learn that humans were very good at adapting to new situations, especially when those situations involved fighting for their survival. The battle for Luna Base lasted 6 hours and changed the war forever. The Crimson Guard landed expecting to face frightened humans with stolen weapons, but Captain Rodriguez had prepared something special for the Empire's elite warriors. Her defenders used the moon's low gravity and underground tunnels to create a fighting environment that favored speed and cunning over size and strength. The Zephyrian elite warriors were bigger and stronger than humans, but they had never fought in an environment where their enemies could leap 20 feet in any direction or disappear into passages too small for them to follow. Rodriguez's soldiers used mining charges as grenades, construction lasers as weapons, and the base's life support system as a weapon delivery method. When the smoke cleared, 37 Crimson Guard warriors were dead, and the remaining 13 had surrendered. Commander Velther received the battle report while his ship was under attack by human fighters that seemed to appear from nowhere. The loss of his elite forces was devastating, but what worried him more were the tactical reports. The humans were not just defending anymore, they were hunting. Small groups of human ships were appearing throughout the solar system, attacking Zephyrian positions with hit-and-run tactics that left his forces confused and demoralized. Captain Amy Peterson commanded the UES Vengeance, the first human warship built entirely with technology captured from the Zephyrians. Her ship looked like no human vessel ever built, with curved hull plating and weapon systems that glowed with alien energy. But the crew was entirely human, and they thought like humans, which gave them advantages the original Zephyrian designers had never considered. Amy's mission was to take the war beyond Earth's solar system. Her ship and 5 others like it had been equipped with captured Zephyrian navigation systems and jump drives. They were going to attack the supply lines that kept the alien invasion force operational. It was a dangerous mission because they would be operating in unknown space against enemy forces that might number in the thousands. The first target was a Zephyrian supply depot 3 light-years from Earth. Intelligence gathered from captured prisoners indicated it was lightly defended because the Empire had never needed to protect their rear areas from attack. The depot supplied fuel, weapons, and replacement parts to the invasion fleet, and destroying it would force Velther to choose between continuing the attack on Earth or protecting his supply lines. Amy's attack fleet arrived at the depot during what the Zephyrians considered their rest period. The alien facility was enormous, built to supply dozens of warships, but its defenses were minimal. The human ships approached using Zephyrian identification codes taken from captured vessels. and by the time the depot's defenders realized they were under attack, it was too late to mount an effective resistance. The battle lasted less than an hour. Human ships using hybrid human Zephyrian weapon systems destroyed the depot's shields and weapon platforms, while teams of soldiers captured the facility's command center. The Zephyrians defending the depot had never faced an enemy that combined their own technology with human tactical thinking, and they surrendered rather than face complete destruction. Dr. Susan Wells made her most important discovery while examining the captured depot's computer systems. The Zephyrian Empire was not as strong as they had pretended. Their conquest of 17 worlds had been possible because each world fought alone, without allies or support. The Empire's military was designed for intimidation and quick victories, not for long campaigns against determined enemies. The intelligence Susan gathered revealed something even more important. The Zephyrian Empire controlled dozens of species, but most of them remained in their home systems under Imperial supervision. They had never been fully integrated into Zephyrian society, and many of them resented their conquerors. The Empire's apparent strength was built on the fear and isolation of conquered peoples who had never been able to work together. General Thompson used this intelligence to plan Operation Starfall, the largest human military action since the war began. Instead of simply defending Earth, human forces would simultaneously attack Zephyrian positions throughout the solar system while sending messages to conquered species and other star systems. The goal was to prove that the Empire could be defeated and encourage rebellions on conquered worlds. The operation began with coordinated strikes on every Zephyrian position in Earth's solar system. Human forces that had been hidden in asteroid fields, on the moons of outer planets, and in deep space installations revealed themselves and attacked simultaneously. The aliens found themselves fighting on dozens of fronts at once, their centralized command structure unable to cope with so many simultaneous threats. Colonel Don Wright led the attack on the main Zephyrian base on Mars. His force included soldiers from 12 different nations, all working together with captured alien equipment and new weapons designed specifically to counter Zephyrian defenses. The base fell in 4 hours, and Wright's teams captured intact computer systems that contained detailed information about the Empire's military organization. Captain Morrison, now commanding a small fleet of captured Zephyrian vessels crewed by humans, appeared in the outer reaches of the Zephyrian home system. His ships broadcast a message in the Zephyrian language to every world in the Empire, telling them that the humans of Earth had defeated Imperial forces and were willing to help any world that wanted freedom from Zephyrian rule. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Rebellions broke out on 6 different worlds as conquered species realized that the Empire was not invincible. The Zephyrian military found itself fighting wars on multiple fronts while their home system came under threat from human forces using their own technology against them. Commander Velther sat in his command chamber, watching reports of defeats and rebellions flood in from across the Empire. The simple conquest of a primitive world had become a disaster that was destroying everything his people had built over centuries. The humans had not just refused to surrender, they had turned the Empire's own strength against itself. The final blow came when Morrison's fleet appeared in orbit around the Zephyrian homeworld. The human captain sent a simple message to the Imperial Council, using the same words Velther had used when the war began. The humans were offering the Zephyrians 30 days to surrender, and promising that resistance would be met with the same determination the Empire had faced at Earth. The hunters had become the hunted, and the war was almost over. 1 year after the first alien ships appeared over Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of what had once been called the Eternal Dawn. The massive Zephyrian mothership had been renamed the UES Liberation and now served as the flagship for the newly formed Galactic Federation Defense Force. Through the viewing screen, she could see representatives from 47 different worlds gathering for the peace conference that would reshape the galaxy. The war had ended not with Earth's surrender but with the complete collapse of the Zephyrian Empire. What had started as a routine conquest had become the catalyst for the largest rebellion in galactic history. Species that had been enslaved for centuries had risen up when they learned that humans had proven the empire could be defeated. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting wars on dozens of worlds while their own home system was blockaded by human forces. Commander Velther sat in a conference room aboard the Liberation, no longer a conqueror but a prisoner of war who had become something unexpected. Through months of conversations with Dr. Alan Brooks, he had begun to understand concepts that Zephyrian society had never developed. Individual choice, democratic decision-making, and voluntary cooperation were ideas that changed how he thought. About everything his people had done, the transformation of Velther reflected what was happening to his entire species. Without their rigid hierarchy and conquest-focused culture, individual Zephyrians were discovering they could think and act independently. Some found this freedom terrifying, but others embraced it eagerly. For the first time in their history, Zephyrians were developing different opinions, personal preferences, and individual personalities. President Helen Martinez had traveled to the Liberation to personally oversee the peace negotiations. The document being written would establish principles that had never existed in galactic politics. Instead of the usual victor-takes-all approach, humanity was proposing something revolutionary. A voluntary alliance of species working together. For mutual benefit rather than the domination of strong over weak, the Galactic Federation Charter was unlike any treaty in known history. It established that every species had the right to govern itself, that no world could be conquered or colonized without the consent of its inhabitants, and that all members would work together to defend any world that faced invasion. The Federation would have a military force, but its purpose would be protection rather than conquest. Dr. Susan Wells found herself in charge of technology sharing between the Federation's member species. The combination of human innovation, Zephyrian, engineering, and knowledge from dozens of other civilizations was creating advances that none of them could have achieved alone. New ships, weapons, and tools were being developed that would benefit every member world. Captain Amy Peterson, now an admiral, was chosen to lead the first Federation exploration fleet beyond charted space. Her mission reflected humanity's new role in the galaxy. Instead of looking for worlds to conquer, they were searching for civilizations that might need help, defending themselves from other empires that still practiced the old ways of domination and slavery. The fleet under Amy's command was a symbol of what the Federation represented. Human ships flew alongside vessels from 20 different species, their crews working together using the best technology and tactics each civilization could contribute. They were explorers and protectors, carrying the message that cooperation was stronger than conquest. General Rick Thompson oversaw the integration of former Zephyrian military units into the Federation Defense Force. Many alien soldiers chose to join the new organization, bringing valuable experience and knowledge about other potential threats in the galaxy. The Federation military operated on principles completely different from Imperial forces, emphasizing protection of civilians and voluntary service. The most important change was in how military operations were conducted. Federation doctrine emphasized minimal force, protection of non-combatants, and the offer of surrender terms that actually meant something. Enemies were not destroyed if they could be convinced to change their ways, and conquered territory was returned to its original inhabitants whenever possible. Captain Jake Morrison commanded one of the new exploration vessels, the UES Pioneer, on a mission to contact civilizations beyond the former Imperial borders. His ship carried diplomats, scientists, and teachers rather than soldiers and weapons. Their goal was to spread the ideas that had transformed galactic civilization, offering alliance and protection to any world that wanted freedom. The response to these missions was overwhelming. Dozens of species that had lived in fear of imperial expansion or other threats eagerly joined the Federation. Others chose to remain independent but signed mutual defense treaties. The idea of voluntary cooperation was spreading faster than any empire had ever expanded through conquest. Dr. Brooks established the Galactic Institute for Cultural Exchange on Earth, where representatives from member species could learn about each other's societies, technologies, and ways of thinking. The facility became a center of innovation as different civilizations shared knowledge and developed new solutions to old problems. One of the most successful programs was the integration of former slaves and conquered peoples into Federation society. Species that had been forbidden to develop their own technologies or maintain their cultures were given support to rebuild their civilizations. Many chose to contribute their unique abilities to Federation projects while maintaining their independence. The Zephyrian homeworld became a symbol of the transformation that was possible when conquest was replaced by cooperation. Former imperial citizens worked alongside humans and other species to rebuild their society based on principles of individual freedom and voluntary association. Some Zephyrians chose to join the Federation military or diplomatic corps using their knowledge of former imperial territory to help liberate other enslaved worlds. Commander Velthor, now calling himself by the human name Victor, became one of the Federation's most effective ambassadors to former imperial worlds. His personal transformation from conqueror to liberator helped convince other Zephyrians that change was possible and beneficial. He often said that losing the war against humanity was the best thing that had ever happened to his people. The final scene of this transformation took place in a school on Earth where children from 15 different species learned together. Their teacher, a former Zephyrian warrior named Grace, was explaining the principle that had started the Federation. When someone demands that you surrender your freedom, sometimes the best response is simply to say no and mean it. The lesson was simple, but it had changed the galaxy forever. The aliens had wanted a colony when they came to Earth, expecting to add another world to their empire through intimidation and superior technology. Instead, they discovered a species that refused to be conquered and accidentally conquered their conquerors through the power of better ideas about freedom, cooperation, and the right of every thinking being to choose their own destiny.